want to get right into this. First of all, I've been wanting to have a conversation with you for quite some time. I've been following your career now for probably about, 8 to 10 years, almost a decade. I became aware of you.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome. I became aware of you through celebrity chef Marcus Samuelson. I actually worked for him for a while when he opened Red Rooster. And when he was doing Top Chef, and you know how it is. It's like, one chef, and then the chefs talk about all the other great chefs, and then everybody wants to be on Top Chef. So it's like Padma Lakshmi, So what I love about you, first of all, is I just want to start by saying I love the way you speak truth to power.
Thank you.
Speak truth to power. You're an ally, you're an advocate. But before I get into speaking truth to power, I want to talk about, coming to the United States. Your mom laid the foundation. You get here when you're 4. You're coming of age. What was it like, coming of age in the United States? Being a young girl, you know what I mean? You're, coming of age
I'll tell you, it was easier for me, I think, because I came to New York. New York was my introduction to this country, and I actually came on Halloween night. And I remember like kids knocking on my door, and my mom kept opening the door and handing out what I thought was candy put out for me to welcome me. And I thought, America, this is
Wait a second, Padma, did you say you thought the Halloween candy was put out for you specifically?
Yeah, because I thought my mom just put it out on a platter because I was coming from India, like a celebration, because I literally landed on Halloween night. I landed at JFK on Halloween night. So when she kept giving it away, every time a person, rung the doorbell, I was like, what is going on? Then she told me that kids are dressed up. She explained the tradition. I just thought, what a beautiful country. All you have to do is dress up and knock on someone's door and they give you candy.
That is so sweet. That is so sweet.
So I really didn't have any issues with racism until we moved to California when I was a tween. And, that's when it dawned on me that I was different. In New York, obviously, I knew I was different because all the magazines only had white girls on it. All the ads and billboards and TV shows only had white families. So, I got it. But I didn't feel that different because in New York, everybody was different. Not so in California. And California is a very diverse state, and it's a lot different than when I was growing up there in the 80s. But it's very segregated. There are a lot of Asians, there's a lot of Filipinos, a lot of Latins, Latinx people, a lot of African Americans, but they don't intermix very much. At least they didn't, in the San Gabriel Valley in the 80s. And so that was hard for me. Like, you kind of had to pick like what table you were sitting at. And there was no Indian table, So, I just mostly hung around a little bit of everybody, or the theater geeks, whoever, were in my class there. And it really did hurt me. I remember in 5th grade, I was called the N-word.
Are you serious? In the 5th grade? Wow, that's pretty
by
aggressive.
A guy with the last name of Morales, by the way. I remember his name. You always remember.
Of course, you always remember that stuff. You always remember that. I can remember a guy named Chris Waters when I was 14 years old. I was a freshman in high school, Hendersonville, North Carolina, and he harassed me every single day. Like every single day. And, fast forward to the advent of Facebook, he requested my friendship. And my response was like, yeeks, like ice, not going to do that. I want to talk about how you got started into hosting, because we don't have a lot of time. And of course you have this huge life and there's so much ground that I would like to cover. And hopefully I can do that at another point in time in the interview. But I want to talk about how you got started into modeling, and whether or not modeling was a gateway to you becoming the television host in Italy, when you were starting your career.
It certainly was. I was studying abroad during my last semester of college when I met a modeling agent. And so I modeled, then. And then after I graduated, I just had a degree in theater and American Lit. So what else was I going to do? But you know, when I got to Spain, I suddenly felt beautiful. I felt that my looks
Mm.
were coveted, even though everyone in Spain looked the same and there wasn't as much diversity in Spain than there was in California. I felt more appreciated. I felt more just attractive, you know.
I get it.
All my life I kind of had that typical brown girl loathing, especially because of, you know, colorism and Indian culture is so pervasive even in my own family. And so I started modeling and I went back to Europe right after graduation that fall. And, you know, I don't think I would be able to do what I do today on television or in food if it wasn't for my travels as a model, because I didn't have any money. I had a lot of college loans, and luckily modeling
Mm.
allowed me to pay them off and also to see the world. So I always was really interested in food, and it was always an elevated hobby. So I would go to all these jobs to do photo shoots and catalogs. And when I was there, I would just kind of ask the cab drivers where you should eat, because they always know the
Oh, the
best.
cab drivers always know. The cab drivers always know. You had a funny story, something that happened earlier in your TV career in Italy, where you made some sort of flub, I think, to the host of the television show, and then it
Yeah,
ran into like the playback. Can you kind of talk about that? Because I think that's so funny.
sure.
Because it's
You know,
those little moments that can
yeah, it
spiral
is.
into
And
something like really big.
you never know when they're going to happen. You can't, you know, you can't rehearse that stuff. Basically, I started my career on television, on Italian television, speaking in Italian. And, you know, I learned Italian in Italy. I'm not a native Italian, of course. So I would every now and then make some flubs. And, you know, you don't know the literal translation always of bad words. And
Right.
so I called Galeazzi, who is this very famous sportscaster.
Galeazzi. I
Yeah,
love the
I called
name.
him.
Galeazzi.
Like, yeah, and he's like this big. He's like an Italian Jabba the Hutt. I called him stronzo, which I just thought meant jerk. But, you know, because people use it left and right, but it
What is
actually
it?
means,
Stronzo?
yeah, it means
Stronzo.
piece of shit.
Oh my God. Oh
So,
my God. So
and
when
this,
Galeazzo is the host of the show, your boss,
well,
right?
he's not the host of the show, he's part of the cast, but
Oh,
anyway, yeah.
okay.
But like he's a very big figure in Italian. It was a variety show, so he would come in for
Gotcha.
the soccer reports. But he is a very big national figure, and so I called Galeazzi a stronzo, and you know this was live Italian television in the late '90s. There was no 5-second tape delay, and they had a show
Um,
called Blob. And it's sort of like Talk Soup, you know, where they just show clips from the week,
yeah.
all the programs. And that thing just, you know, it was whatever the 90s version of viral is on TV. And so all of a sudden, you know, that kind of went all over the place. And so that was just a funny learning experience for me.
That is hilarious. We all have them. I look at some of my bloopers from the early days of me, doing, television news as a young reporter and, trying to get that hair together and,
Oh my God, yeah.
get your stand up. They used to send us out there, we're 20 something and, we were the whole team. We were the whole team. So today we're here, we're promoting your new show, Taste the Nation with Padma Lakshmi. I watched every episode, and of course, the episode where you go to the Gullah Geechee. Oh my God, Padma, it brought tears to my eyes. Whose idea was it to go to the Gullah Geechee and, hang out with, Chef Twitty and just, you're cracking crab there. You're getting all that experience. You're talking about, the Africans who were brought to that part of the Gullah Islands, you know what I mean, to grow rice, to be the servants. And I think what I loved most about that episode is it really points to the origin of soul food and how healthy it was. There's rice and there's
Mm-hmm.
seafood, there's fish, because today, fast food or not fast food, soul food, it's so greasy. It has this unhealthy stigma attached to it. And that really isn't the origin of soul food.
It was very important for me to do this episode. I knew that I wanted to do Gullah Geechee cuisine from the start. I made that very clear even when I pitched the show to Hulu, because we never think about African Americans when we think about immigrants in this country. And of course, they're not willing immigrants, but they are a product of forced migration. And we never talk about African American food independent of their connection to white colonial masters. But they came to this continent with a wealth of knowledge and food traditions that date back centuries to West Africa, just like my ancestors date back centuries, just like Chinese or Thai or Mexican. And so I wanted to give credit and pay homage to that. I also thought that, you know, it's really good to have a specific food identity. And we always tend to just lump African American food with soul food or, you know, Southern food. Well, first of all, Southern food was always made by Black people. Let's just say that.
Correct. She's on record, guys. She's on record.
But, you know, when you look at red rice, it is so obviously related to jollof rice in Nigeria. And I kind of had this aha moment. My daughter goes to the United Nations school.
All my Nigerian friends are going to watch this and they're going to be like, oh, no. I know you follow it. There's always this thing about jollof rice and then jambalaya, you know, and then like, you know, etouffee being born out of jambalaya. I mean, it's so big. It's
totally. So and by the way, a lot of those West African slaves came here and were sought after because of their knowledge of rice cultivation. Okay. So it is no accident that, you know, when slavery was finally really abolished, that the rice industry in Carolina collapsed because there was nobody to tend to it. And so, you know, they came with all this knowledge, all these skills. They weren't just, you know, kind of brought here willy-nilly. They were against their will, but I'm saying, like, I just wanted to give credit where credit was due. And I had spent 6 weeks in Charleston filming.
I was going to ask, how long were you there for?
Well, I was there with Top Chef because I filmed a whole season there for 6 weeks. And I met BJ during that time and we became good friends. And, you know, the show got some heat for going to what was once a plantation, to Middleton Place. And we did a tribute dinner there to Edna Lewis because she actually
I love Edna Lewis. I love Edna Lewis.
She actually lived at Middleton Place, you know, later in her life. And so I just felt like, you know, if we don't look our history, as painful as it is, in the eye, we will never evolve and overcome it. And so when I got the, you know, show, when I got Taste the Nation greenlit, I went back right there where people were upset that I went, and I got to have a much deeper explanation on film from Michael. Michael is a beautiful writer. He's just so eloquent and knowledgeable, and that was just an obvious choice. And, you know, you really see what it was before it became this very beautiful
Padma, I was right there. I felt like I was there in every episode, though. Every episode. But, you know, being a woman of African descent, when that camera opened, that wide shot, you know, and you can just see the lush greenery and the islands and, you know, the body of water and the plantations. I'm like, oh my goodness, I could just feel like the ancestors, you know, celebrating in that moment. You know,
it's a magical place. And also, you know, we talk about all this like fancy she farm to table bullshit. Actually, the Gullah Geechee were always farm to table. They always lived off the land. They always fished. They always caught crabs. They always grew their own vegetables.
My mother lives in Hendersonville, North Carolina. Okay, it's in the Smoky Mountains. Hendersonville, North Carolina is where I went to high school for 2 years before transferring to a high school outside of Philadelphia. During the summers, now both sides of my family are Native American, African American and Native American. My mother's father when he would come visit us for the summer, every morning the man would get up, 3 o'clock in the morning, he'd go fishing. By the time the children got up, Padma, it'd be fresh fish out the water on the table.
Yeah.
You know, everything was done. Everything was so fresh. Sun tea, baking outside in the sun, you know, root vegetables, everything pulled up from the ground. Everything is from the earth. And so that's why I said I love that you were able to include the Gullah Geechee into the first season of Taste the Nation. And I think it's really going to resonate, particularly in this time, you know, with Black Lives Matter, with the Black experience always being so undercut and devalued, you know, and that's one thing, you know, I love about you as well. You're definitely someone who I consider, you know, an advocate and an ally. You know, talk a little bit about, you know, what you're feeling today. You know, I think back to July 28th, 2016 was my 43rd birthday. I was on the floor at the Democratic National Convention, you know, waiting for Hillary Rodham Clinton to accept her nomination, okay? Few short months later, November 9, 2016 is a day that will forever be in infamy. Donald J. Trump becomes the president of the United States. You know, as a woman who immigrated to this country, what is your outlook now on the democratic process here in the United States?
I think the Electoral College needs to be abolished.
It does need to go. It's like friggin' Animal Farm, right?
I mean, I think it's a country of people, not a country of land. Nobody really owns land. You only rent it for the course of your life and maybe your children's life. And like, what I really find hypocritical, to say the least, that's the best way I can put it, is that this president thinks that, you know, his German grandfather who came here, that his humanity is worth more than the guy driving the Lomo truck in Paterson, New Jersey, who's Peruvian, or the Thai grandma in Las Vegas. Like, we're all the same.
Sidebar. The Peruvian episode was wonderful too. The Peruvian, that's my second best one. And then,
the good one, yeah.
I mean, there's so many.
The thing is, like, if you just stop and listen, everybody has a compelling story. And I'm interested in these stories. I'm interested in these foods, but I'm also interested, I dedicated my life to really doing this kind of food, even in my cookbooks and in the encyclopedia of spices and stuff. But I'm also interested in the people behind that food, the hands that make that food, because they are what actually make America. Like, to erase the importance that immigration has had on shaping this country and its identity, not only its food, it's literature, it's art, it's music, it's sports. I mean, come on. Like, that is really what makes America great. It's not the economy. And even if it is our capitalism, who do you think worked hard to make the capital of capitalism? It's immigrants. And that is what allows so much more. So, you know, no matter what America's foreign policy was in place, America always had this higher moral ground. It was always a beacon to people all over the world that you can come here, you can be tired, you can be poor, it doesn't matter who your family is, what your nationality is, or your name is. If you work hard, you too have access to the American dream. And in the pursuit of your own American dream, you will contribute to the larger American system. And you know, it's very short-sighted. It's very penny-wise and pound-foolish to just close the gates on our borders, just to negate everything that has happened because of various people. And I really wanted to look at that. I was tired of, frankly, white people telling our stories. And I wanted to hear from the source. And I grew up with Black people all my life. And, you know, I feel a great affinity for Black culture. And, you know, I even, to be honest, I have to watch out sometimes, because I remember in Kentucky last year, I had some cornrows in my hair, really, because when you're getting your hair blow dried.
What happened, girl?
Yeah, you know
what happened.
Well,
what happened?
So, you know, I didn't want to wash my hair again. I was tired. My hairdresser, Jeannie, was like, okay, let's just throw some braids. And I said, you know what? It's going to rain. Just do some really tight cornrows. I can't even do them myself, you know, but she did a beautiful job. And we've worn them before, like when we were filming another finale and everything. And then just happened that day that we were going to the Rupp Arena, which is a basketball arena. It's a college basketball arena. And I didn't think about this, but I guess I had blue jeans on and a white tank top, and people were like, oh, you're wearing, you know, you're dressing like a gang member because you have a wife beater on and you have braids. And I'm like, first of all, I don't call my white tank tops white beaters. I've never used that term in my life.
The worst? Isn't that the worst?
I find it offensive as a woman. I think it's horrible. And secondly, like, you know, I really feel like I love Black culture and I want to be as close to it as possible. And so I really wasn't thinking about it like, oh, that's so cool. Let me take it from that culture and put it. I grew up in New York City.
You didn't feel like you were participating in what we call cultural appropriation, is what
I didn't. I really didn't. And, you know, at the end of the day, like, and I put a post up about Kara Walker, and somebody said, well, since you're talking about a Black artist.
Oh, Kara Walker was amazing. Did you see that exhibition in Brooklyn?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, Brooklyn Museum of Art. I love her.
I do too. And there are other great artists that I love, like Amy Sherrill and Deborah Roberts, who's a really good friend of mine. You know, I just wore these braids innocently, and it wasn't a big story at all, but it bothered me. And I called Lena Waithe up. I called Zadie Smith up. I called five.
What did Lena Waithe have to say? I'm interested to know what Lena had to say.
She was supportive. She said, you know, it's just a really sensitive time, but with everything going on, there are better things to do than attack allies about their braids. Like, you know, I come from an Indian culture where braids are really central, and actually they're called cornrows in this country since the 60s, when the Black Panthers, you know, took it up as a resurgence of African culture. But before that, they were worn in the Caribbean, and they were called cane rows, like rows of sugar cane.
Right.
And by the way, a lot of people don't know this, but the British brought indentured servants all over the world as slave labor from India too. Nobody wants to talk about it. But, you know, at the end of the day, like, my hairstyle is not worth hurting anybody's feelings or offending anybody. It's not that big of a deal. But I really, you know, I have such a close relationship with the African American community.
I think it goes both ways, though, Padma. I know one of my favorite college professors from Cheyney University, which is the oldest HBCU, Historical Black College University, founded in 1837, nestled right outside of Philadelphia. One of my favorite professors, Dr. Rayapati, may he rest in peace. And he always had wonderful stories to share about India and his upbringing and the culture and the history and slavery. So I think African Americans, Africans, and Indians, you know, we're interwoven there.
Yeah.
You know, we connect spiritually. I think there are just a lot of commonalities. Like you spoke earlier about colorism, you know, within your family. Colorism is very big in the African American community, you know, light skin, dark skin, brown paperback test. You know, darker skinned women are looked at as, you know, being whores and, you know, the baby makers and, you know, just, you know, the sexual being, you know, this stereotype of some kind of fetish, you know, and then the lighter skinned woman is, you know, she's for marriage and to be held on a pedestal. And so, you know, I totally understand when you talk about, you know, colorism and some of the things that Indian women face, you know, there's some of the same issues and concerns that Black women face. You know, I want to go back to what I opened with. I'm a little shivering here. It's a little cold where I am, and I have no hair. So if my voice is trembling, it's because I'm getting cold. Speaking truth to power, you know, when you are expecting your lovely daughter, Krishna, it was all in the tabloids. I mean, it was everywhere I went to New York City. Oh, you know, she doesn't know who the father of her child is. You know, and what I loved about you, Padma, girl, that's when I was like, yes! Listen, I was having cocktails with the girlfriend, and this is how big that moment was for me as a woman when I heard that story. Me and my girlfriends, I think we were at Indochine talking about, yes, bitch. Like, we were like, yes, bitch, because you owned your power. Yeah. You were like, you know what? I'm not married, okay? I'm not in a committed relationship. I'm dating. As a result of dating, I'm expecting this beautiful human being, and I will establish fraternity. But men are not held to that same standard.
Not at all. You know, I was tired of it. I didn't think it was anybody's business who the baby's father was. I mean, I'm not running for office, but even if I was, like, I just found it really very much a double standard. If I was a guy and that happened to...
So I want to ask you this, like, Padma, was that, ooh, I'm on a wheelchair and I'm rolling away from the screen. Was that your visceral response to be like, middle finger to the patriarch and the subjugation? Or was it something that you kind of sat with a little bit before you responded with that response?
I didn't respond at all. You know, I really didn't, because it was a personal matter. And so I think, you know, I never said anything. I never put out any statement. And so, you know, I was cringing inside, because it was not only splashed all over the papers in America, it was splashed all over the English papers where I was a lot. It was splashed all over the Indian papers where all my family to read every morning. So, you know, I just kept a really low profile. Like, I didn't want so much of my personal life has been out there so much. And
it's a lot. It's a lot. So, I applaud you, girl.
So I didn't want to feed any of that. And, you know, I was told I couldn't have a baby because of my endometriosis. The fact that God chose to bring Krishna through me was such a gift. I didn't care who the father was of this child. I was just so happy.
I just couldn't believe that that was a story. I couldn't believe that that was a story. And another tentacle that kind of came out of that, you know, for me and my fellow African-American women and just women of, you know, African descent, we were like, wow, if that were a Black woman, how would that turn out? We would lose every contract. We were going down the list. We were like, if it were made public that a host of this beloved American show was expecting a child and the father is allegedly, you know, not known yet, that Black woman would be dragged. And the bigger part of it is like, we'd be dragged by our own first.
Oh yeah, I was dragged by a lot of brown folk. It was a high density brown situation. I mean, you know, Indians are very conservative. They're incredibly judgmental. They are moral policing everybody left and right, especially if you're a woman, if you're a Brahmin woman. And, you know, I just felt badly for my relatives in India, you know, my just like average middle class people. But honestly, like, that experience and coming out of that experience made me much stronger, gave me a lot of confidence. And taught me a lot of lessons that I will never forget.
You handled it so well. I mean, I was addicted to every press aspect. I was, because women, I know what it's like, you know, we're held at a different standard, you know, to date 2 or 3 men at a time, you know, you're called every god-awful name under the sun. But, you know, when a man does it, it's like, oh yeah, you know, way to go, fella, you know.
I know, they like pat you on the back for being a playboy. Yeah, and the thing was, like, those 2 men that I was dating knew that I didn't want to settle down with either one of them, and knew about the other.
Oh, go ahead, play it.
No, but I mean, it was a temporary thing. It wasn't like, it didn't, you know, I wasn't constantly seeing 2 people. So, but those nuances and details get lost. And, you know, cut to 10 years later, I mean, I'm actually with the biological father of my child. This is, you know, the good news. And we certainly get the badge for most improved, you know?
And that's beautiful. That's so beautiful. And that's what I said earlier at the top of the conversation, like the way you speak truth to power, the way you advocate for women's rights. You know, you talk about endometriosis. I suffer from fibroids, you know, I had a myomectomy. And, you know, when you were talking about being married and, you know, everything that came with that, you know, not being able to be intimate and wanting to be intimate. And, you know, Padma, there's just so many similarities. And I think that's why women and men, but you're a woman's woman. Like we see you, we hear you talking, you get on Instagram, you're like, I got stretch marks, this is happening. You know, I want to just talk about like getting to that place in your life where you say, I have this scar on my arm. Yes, I have stretch marks. Yes, I dated. Yes, I had a child. I mean, you know, you're in your 40s, you know what I mean? And you're in this, I call it the sweet spot, actually. You know, so talk about just that evolution, you know.
Sure. I think I'm going to have to wrap it up soon because they're signaling that I'm late for my next interview. But very briefly, that, you know, that confidence, that self-confidence to really accept who I am did not come overnight. And it was very hard won. It was hard won the hard way. And it happened over years. And I just think we don't allow both women and men to really develop who they are. You know, we're such a culture that is obsessed with youth and perfection. And you know, I feel better now than I ever did. I'm going to be 50 in September. And I feel more in shape. I feel more in control of my own sensuality. My scar is a symbol of survival to me, and it saved my mother's life because my arm went over her chest in the car accident. So it took me a while. It wasn't always there. It didn't happen at once. It really took me working on myself. I had always tried to be the perfect American girl next door as a model, as an actor, as whatever. But you know what? I never was I was never American enough to do that. So then I was like, all right, fuck it. I'm just going to be myself. See how that works.
I love it.
And it worked great. You know, it actually worked great because when I started being accepting of who I am and not worrying about it, and it wasn't easy. I'm not going to say, oh yeah, I just woke up one day. It really took me being like talking to myself.
Well, that's what young women need to hear. That's why I wanted you to say that it's an evolution. You just don't wake up and become and exist and have all this agency. It's an evolution. You know, since we're out of time, I just want to say thank you so much. Final question, why should people tune in to Taste the Nation with Padma Lakshmi, which premieres this week on Hulu? Why should they tune in?
This Thursday, June 19th. People should watch the show because it's actually about real Americans across this country who are cooking delicious, interesting food and contributing to the American culture. The show is about so much more than food. The food is just the key into these communities. And they are beautiful stories, and they're stories of real America. That's why.
Padma Lakshmi, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me on.
50th birthday, and I hope we can have another extended conversation.
I hope so too.
Take care.
Bye.